Hi everyone. On today's podcast, I have my friend and my brother, Mr. Atherton. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Atherton is a pharmacist, a nanoscientist, and an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. Walk me through your journey from pharmacy to nanoscience to entrepreneurship. Probably highlighting some of the things that motivated the transition at each of the stages.
I'll take it a little bit further back.
Okay.
I grew up in a house where there was a lot of medicine in the house as a child. And my siblings and I used to play with the medicine. And when you get bored, you start to come up with ideas of, well, let's make a cure for AIDS, right? This is in the late 90s.
Okay.
This is in Zimbabwe. The HIV AIDS pandemic is spreading. And so we'd make a cure for AIDS. And at the same time, we had pigeons in the garage. So, the next stage is we've made the medicine and we've made the cure for AIDS. We need to actually test it on our subjects, the pigeons.
Okay.
So we'd go into the garage, and we never really did it. We never had we didn't have the heart to do it. So that didn't have happening.
Okay.
But that was the thing. My father was a motor mechanic, but he was also he started a garage, so he was an entrepreneur. And I remember having conversations with him where he would be at school and would start to talk about, this is primary school, and we'll be talking about how much your parents earn and what's your parents' job title. And my friends would talk about how their parents are managers. I'd ask my father, Dad, what's your job title? And he said it was managing director. And it was such a boring title because why don't you just say you're a manager, Dad? Everyone understands that you're a manager. Why do you have to be a managing director?
Yeah.
And then the question was, so how much do you earn?
Yeah.
And his 2 points, he always reiterated those 2 points. The first was that I don't really have a salary because it depends on how much work we got and then we pay the team salary, and then whatever's left is the question of where are we in the cycle, are we reinvesting, or what are we doing? And I can't go and tell my friends that I need you to give me a number, so
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the second one was maybe stop thinking about it from the context of how much do I earn, but look at it. And at the time the staff component was 12.
Okay.
And we have 12 families that we work with and we support. So the concept of entrepreneurship and building a community as we grow whatever it is we're building started then. And then after that I did a degree in pharmacy. I was excited, I loved it.
Yeah.
And then my fourth year research project was quite challenging. But I really sunk my teeth into it and I started to enjoy research. And then I did the master's in nanoscience. And it was a program that was split between, it's a 2-year program. The first 10 months you do the theory of nanotechnology, the physics, the biology, the chemistry.
Yeah.
But the last 14 months you do a research project. And so during the theory we learned about these cool things called aptamers, which are single-stranded DNA that does what an antibody pretty much does. Gross simplification, but essentially. But the beauty of it is if you're going to make an aptamer, you can, in theory, make it in a lab as an undergraduate student or as a master's student. And so I was excited by that and said, I wanted to make aptamers, but the question was what to make aptamers for. So this was in 2014.
Yeah.
And at the time we had also just learned of the Ebola outbreak.
In West Africa.
In West Africa.
Yeah.
And so the question was, why not do research that actually has impact? Because the challenge that we had then was similar, different but similar to the one that we had with COVID. You've got a disease, that is infectious, that is dangerous. But it comes with common symptoms like flu-like symptoms. And at the time, there was no point of care or rapid test for Ebola. So you'd get the blood and then send it to one of 14 labs on the African continent. 14.
Wow.
Or
14.
you would send it to Europe or to the US or to the UK.
Where are those labs, the 14, where are they domiciled?
Now it's more than 14.
Okay.
Because of a lot of the work that has happened.
Yeah.
One of the big ones was in Senegal, as well as the other one was in South Africa. And the other one that comes to mind was the one in Uganda. So a lot of work was being done.
Okay.
But the challenge was, by the time, what do you do with someone who's febrile in a region where there's also malaria? And malaria also have those similar symptoms.
Yeah.
And so the idea was, let's make a lateral flow test for Ebola diagnosis. And that became the master's project. But instead of using antibodies, use aptamers. The reason was because aptamers are single-stranded DNA, so they're more stable. It means that we can actually look at preparedness, because a lateral flow test made from an antibody typically has a shelf life of 18 to 24 months. We don't know when the next Ebola outbreak is going to be. We don't know how many diagnostics it's going to require. We don't know where they should be stored for easy preparedness. So that the theory at the time was, if we use something made not from antibodies, which are proteins that are incredible but also fragile, temperature-wise, what if we use something made from DNA, which is resilient, which could in theory have a lifetime that is indefinite? You could make so many of these and find good places to store them, where if ever someone has a fever, you test them for malaria, it's negative, you could quickly pull this one out. So that was the thinking then. So then I did the research. I made the aptamers for against the Ebola virus, 4 of those aptamers. It was great. I learned a lot. I met a lot of people. I got a lot of support. And then I finished the masters. I met the team from the Side Business School here at Oxford. I met them at the Cape Town offices of the Mandela Rhodes Foundation, because I was a Mandela Rhodes scholar. And it was an interesting conversation, because they said, you're interested in business, you're interested in biotech, maybe think about applying. And I didn't think people like me go to Oxford. So that happened in 2014. In 2015 they came again, but this time they were in Johannesburg. And I happened to be in Johannesburg evaluating my aptamers, how well they're working. So I said, I'll go there. And then I went, and it was the second time around, and I remember Tammy was the lead working for recruiting of African students. Was, hey, it's the second time I'm seeing you. I'm not seeing you at third. The third time I'm seeing you is in Oxford. And she really helped me with the application process. And then I was accepted for the MBA. And I was also fortunate enough to be accepted for the Weidenfeld Hoffman Trust Scholarship, which was an incredible experience. And then I did the MBA. And when I was doing the MBA, the idea was, how can we turn this into a business? How can we turn this idea of developing diagnostics that are really needed on the ground into a business idea? The MBA has a program, it's a module called the entrepreneurship module. And the 5 MBA students come together and they work
project.
Exactly. The EP, the entrepreneurship project. And I was talking to Kirsty, who was my classmate, and saying, this is what I do. And Kirsty said, that's a good idea. Why not do it as an EP? And I said, no, people wouldn't want to do it. Come on. And Kirsty's background was in the not-for-profit sector, the philanthropy sector. And she said, it makes sense. And then we immediately went to Ndakuna. Ndakuna has a fantastic mind. He is an engineer who's also a nurse who's incredible. So Ndakuna comes in, he's from Cameroon, and says, okay, that makes sense, I'm in. And then Tony Tony's background is in operations, says, you know what, I'm really feeling this. And the fullback was Alex. Alex's background is in finance.
Okay.
We had a stellar team, and we worked on that. You know, a lot of progress that we made on understanding that it's not just Ebola. We got in touch with the people at what was then the Public Health England in Salisbury, where they work on these diseases, and they helped us to understand it's not just Ebola. It's a group of Ebola, Lassa fever, dengue, Marburg virus, chikungunya, 8 emerging and dangerous pathogens, and they were on the lookout for pandemics. The next pandemic. We're talking. This is 2016.
Wow.
These guys were ahead of their time, thinking about what is the next pandemic. What is going to be disease X, the disease that is going to cause a pandemic. And so they helped us, as well as a lot of other people really helped us to be able to develop this into a concept. So we submitted our EP, and at that time we had a pitch deck, we had a financial model, and we had a general understanding of how this is going to work, right? And then the MBA ended, and then I was like, you know what, I kind of want to pursue this. I think there's something here. So I did that, and I met Colin. I had met Colin earlier. Colin is much older than I am, a Zimbabwean Rhodes Scholar. Took an interest in supporting me in what I was doing, and said, why don't you come and stay at my house, because I'm leaving. I've got a job outside the UK, and stay at my house and just look after the house. That's incredible support for an entrepreneur. You know. Didn't have any family in the UK, and staying by his house meant, you know, I didn't have to worry about rent.
Yeah.
I had to figure out how to build the company and, you know, a couple of other expenses. That gave me time to think. That gave me time to form. And then I'd come across a couple of other people. The first, not in any particular order, but when we were talking about aptamers, the first thing I did when I got to Oxford was find people who are into aptamer research.
Yeah.
And there's a certain Professor William James who's into aptamer research. Okay. And we had a meeting. It was great. It's just, you know, minds on fire. Just, absolutely. You know, that was beautiful. And you know, he got me thinking about the risks that are there in technology development and de-risking the project.
Yeah. Met
Glenn Layton, who then at the time was a director at Lloyd's Bank.
Okay.
And Glenn was helping me think through the finance.
Yeah.
Met Paul Abrams, who's also Zimbabwean.
Okay.
He's now the CEO of a company called Reactor.
Okay.
And he was helping me think through the implementation, because Paul has extensive experience on the African continent.
Okay.
How would we roll this out? And then I met Stuart Quinn, who would become our founding director. And Stuart helped us to think about the commercialization. Stellar team, another stellar team. Wow. And you know, we had our first meeting at Stuart's old offices in Paddington. Wow. Our first board meeting. Okay. And we came together as a board and said, this is what we're going to do. And then we really fleshed out the idea. What is it that we're going to do? What do the milestones look like? What does success look like? And then we closed our first fundraising round in April 2019.
Wow.
Hutano, the company was founded in March 2018, but we set up our first fundraising round and really kicked off Hutano in April 2019. That's where we also moved into this building. That's the most interesting thing, which is when you meet people that are really good at what they do, and people who really want to make a difference in the world. What's more important is what's the impact we're going to have. More practically, it was equity in the company. But the most important thing was, this makes sense. We want to make a difference. How can we come together to actually bring in the difference you want to make?
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
The journey, we started with Hutano fully formed April 2019.
Okay.
And the focus then became, we wanted to identify what value we can add into people's lives using the technology that we have. The technology that we had at the time was a technology that allows us to make a lateral flow test that can do many different things, not just one disease, but it can do up to the 8 different pathogens at the same time.
Yeah.
But it was going to be temperature stable and have an indefinite shelf life, or as close to indefinite as we could push it. That was the idea. And we made the prototype for that by January 2020.
Okay.
We had submitted a provisional patent application for that. Quite excited, great progress. And then the pandemic came. And a lot of ups and downs. We almost closed a very big investment round, to be able to
roll it out,
to make a COVID test. We wanted to pivot to making a COVID test.
Okay.
It was a great opportunity.
Wow.
And it fell through because it was difficult to tell, with all the locking down and the opening up, the different stages in the disease, whether the market opportunity for a diagnostic developed from scratch would still exist by the time the diagnostic had not only been complete, development hadn't only been completed, but it had been regulatory approved. That was unsuccessful. That left us in a very interesting place as a company. It left us thinking about, so what do we do if we are not doing COVID? That also left us again at a place where we started to ask ourselves as a team, who are we and what are we doing? Soul-searching moments, months that stretched. And I'm really grateful for the team and the lessons that I personally learned from them about how to navigate during uncertain times, about how to be calm when the storm rages outside. But at the end of it, we had extensive help and support, and we realized that there was something brewing in the biotech world. And that was a lot of work that is being done by people to identify better ways to diagnose, do prognosis, and manage diseases. And these researchers are identifying panels. What I mean by panels, it's more than one thing. It can be a protein, more than one thing to better diagnose, say, cancer. It could be 4 or 5 different proteins. And you need to measure those proteins quantitatively. And then we realized people in cardiovascular are doing it, in infectious diseases, in sepsis, you know. And then we realized, hang on, there's something happening here. All these researchers are coming up with really great work, but that work needs to be translated. And we realized that, well, why don't we take the platform we've already developed and make sure that we know it can do many different things at the same time. Why doesn't it just do many different things at the same time quantitatively? So that's where we started focus on. So it became we developed the platform for a point of care diagnostic that quantitatively picks up multiple different things, proteins, whatever you want it to be. And that's when we started working on it. Then the next thing was we found a really cool application for it, which is the ability to know if a child has a fever, will they get sepsis or not? Not do they have sepsis or not, will they get sepsis or not? And that's important, because if someone has sepsis, every 1 hour you delay increases the risk of death by 8%.
Wow.
It's 7.6%, but we always put it at 8. It's context dependent. In some regions, it's as low as 1%. But essentially, the message is the same. If someone has sepsis, you need to treat it. It's better yet if you could know if someone was going to get sepsis, because then you'd be able to get them to the facility and get the intervention as soon as possible. And so that's when we started to get there. And we met at this time, my chairman was Dr. Glenn Layton. And when we were then raising again, we used to have this exercise we used to do as a board. We would say, we're fundraising. Who are we going to approach? And we would brainstorm, draw up a list, put it on an Excel, and then track it. Right? How well is the fundraising going, and who's on our radar? Are we doing?
Yeah.
I remember talking to Glenn, and everyone had given their ideas and said, okay, these are the people I think, these are the people I know, I'm going to approach these people.
Yeah.
And Glenn had one name. I found that quite interesting.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he said, this is the future of diagnostics. I have one target and I will pursue it.
Wow.
The determination, the vision.
Wow.
The vision that I learned a lot from him at that time.
Yeah.
And a few months later, we had a meeting with the CEO of EDX Medical Group,
Okay.
Dr. Mike Hutton.
Okay.
And we got on like a house on fire.
Wow.
We met in London at the Wellcome Trust library.
Okay.
So neutral ground.
Yeah.
And we got there and we started talking about the future of diagnostics. It was exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting. And also to realize that we are working on different ends of the problem together. And so then that conversation progressed from being an investment conversation to being an acquisition discussion.
Yeah.
And Mike, being the visionary that he is, could already see the pieces fitting together.
Yeah.
I was playing catch up. So that was good. And EDX Medical Group acquired us in September of last year, of 2023.
Wow.
And so that's the journey there. A lot of great people.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of pressure that you feel as an individual to demonstrate that. I suppose it's a manifestation of the imposter syndrome, right? I went to Oxford, I need to show that I deserved it, or I need to show that it was, that I'm part of whatever crew it is, which there is no crew,
The elite club of Oxford.
There's this whole, so I could act, let me go to industry, let me go demonstrate, let me go prove myself, right?
Yeah.
And being able to fight that, my perception of what I think people are perceiving me as, which is interesting because it's never as kind as people actually are. People are always generous and kind, So if I think of what people are thinking about that, that's a vortex, right? So that was a challenge, and being able to patiently wait for it, because I finished the MBA in October of 2017. We had no indication of investment by October 2018. It's a full calendar year. I was staying at Collins Place.
Yeah.
And I had some consulting work that I was doing.
Okay.
I was helping a program establish an entrepreneurship program.
Okay.
It was really great. Great. I experienced a lot. I enjoyed that. Because I was interacting with students who wanted to become entrepreneurs.
Okay.
A lot of them have gone on to become friends.
Wow.
And have set up really amazing companies.
Wow.
So then after that, we got the inklings of an investment. But that time period was tough. It was tough because there's always the question of, am I using my time well? And it's at that time there was a feeling of every minute has to be accounted for, which is important. Every minute must be accounted for, but looking at it from a broader perspective of, I was reading a book that was saying, think about yourself, think about your life, think about your family, think about the whole population on the earth, think about the plant life, think about the marine life, think about the only being one of the planet in a field of many. Come back and think about yourself again. And not really that important. Maybe it's okay for you to deal with things as they happen. Do the best that I can and do things as they happen. Then another significant low was when the fundraising round I was telling you about didn't go through. Because then you're in an interesting place. If you've been building a company to guzzle down millions over a short period of time, and your bank account has 5 figures in it. It's a very different company, right?
Yeah.
And Murphy's Law comes to mind. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong exactly at the point that you don't need it to go wrong. And it did. And that was a moment of not want to pack my bags and go home, but a moment of we're in a fight now. Came across this quote the other time. It said, it's by a mixed martial artist.
Okay.
It says, I urge you not to fight. Don't fight. Don't fight. But if you fight, fight like you're the third monkey on the ramp to Noah's Ark.
Wow.
And brother, it's starting to rain.
Wow.
That was that moment.
Wow.
The fight for survival. But to be able to learn how to fight well, how to bring your team along as you are building for survival.
Yeah.
Getting that right and getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And being able to sit down and realize that I was wrong.
Yeah.
And being able to extend to my team and say, I am sorry that I was wrong. I shut down. I started to fight this as though I was alone for getting a great team. And also appreciating the team for the things that were happening.
Yeah.
So that was a time, and also trying to learn what the meaning of success is and what the meaning of failure is. Those two things are quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because success seems to me to not be entirely in my control. I might be mistaken on that, but it seems to me as though it's not entirely in my control.
Okay.
For me to be successful at something, I need to put in effort.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Then there's also the macroeconomics. And then there's an element, let's call it the X factor, right?
Okay.
Faith, luck, grace, karma, whatever you want to call it, however you think through that. It seems to me that all those 3 factors have to come together for success. One component missing might mean failure, and the missing component might not be in my control. And so when things don't go as well as I planned, and I fail or don't succeed, how hard should I make it for myself? And so those are certain thoughts that started to come through and to help me try to figure things out, not just during that time, but all the other times, and trying to understand where I am and what we're doing. And also just the realization of some experiences are like the wind.
Okay.
You feel them as they pass you, but they're gone.
Okay. Okay.
You can stand where you are standing for days.
Yeah.
Because a wind passed by you.
Yeah. Yeah.
The wind passed. It's gone. That responsibility with people who genuinely care about what we are trying to achieve and also care about me really helped me.
Wow.
And that's not just the team that I work with, but also family and friends. You know, being able to call people like you and just rant and just talk about how things are and how they could be. So that's one of the things that really helped with that. The other thing that really helped with that was trying to understand what the right decision is.
Okay.
In the midst of all those chaos, understanding what a good decision is. And trying to build a framework through which to think through things. Most frameworks are wrong, right? But at least you're wrong and understand why you're wrong. So that was also helpful because it helped me to build and continue to build a framework through which to assess decisions as I go. I don't think these are problems we need to address as they happen.
Okay.
If we are addressing them as they happen, we are not in a good place.
Okay.
Because ultimately, I think the question is, how does one live a good life? What are the components to a good life? Each answers for themselves.
Yeah.
But I think one of the components to a good life is a strong social group.
Okay.
Family, friends, colleagues, teammates, right? Genuineness within those relationships.
Yeah.
Because when things like what you've just described happen, and an existential crisis hits, it's always helpful to have your community to navigate through it. It's also great to have a community when things are going great. I'm not saying accumulate relationships
for problems.
No. That's why I say it's lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And then the second thing is one of my favorite thought experiments is the prisoner's dilemma.
Okay.
It's an exercise in game theory.
Okay.
And it says that there are two people that have been arrested for committing a crime.
Okay.
They are put in two different rooms and they're interrogated.
Okay.
And the offer is whoever confesses first gets 5 years instead of 10 years in prison.
Okay.
That automatically sets up a 2x2, right? Where person A confesses and gets 5 years, person B does not confess and gets 10 years.
Okay.
The second is the reverse of the first, right? Which is person A does not confess and gets 10 years, person B confesses and gets 5 years.
Okay.
The two other options that are there are that they both confess and both get 5 years.
Okay.
The last option is that none of them confesses.
Okay.
And none of them go to jail.
Wow.
Both go home.
Okay.
And what you're thinking is wrong. What I thought was wrong. The most common outcome is not the last option.
Wow.
It's not the last option. The most common option is that they both confess.
At different times.
Yes, and they both go to jail for 5 years. Right?
Wow.
It's like flipping a coin.
Yeah.
You're going to eventually get to what the optimum outcome is.
That tail or
Yes.
coin is that tail, right?
Yes, which is the 50-50, right?
Yeah.
If you flip a coin enough, you're going to get to 50-50 for heads, 50 for tails.
Yeah.
Now, that thought experiment is interesting because how do you move that optimum outcome from the 5 years to everyone goes home? And there are certain parameters, people have studied this for a long time, right? There are certain parameters that are there, things like trust, things like previous experiences like that, right?
Yeah.
There are other factors that then contribute to shifting an outcome to where you need it to be. The reason why I say that is because whenever you find yourself as an entrepreneur in a system like that, it's rare that you're the only person affected by it.
Yeah.
I think the culture of the company you've been building, the organization,
Yeah.
the people around you, it might be your customers, it becomes so critical at that point. Because that's where the prisoner's dilemma is decided. What your other captured people are going to do, and you, your team members, is based on the culture you established before this crisis hit. And so I think one of the questions that then comes up from what you said is, how does a leader think through culture? And how does the leader's actions show that culture is important? Which brings me to the last piece, which is, I think that making decisions as a leader, even on a personal front, has to take into consideration short-term as well as long-term. What are the consequences of my decisions in the short term? What are the consequences in the long term?
Yeah.
A leader, an entrepreneur, an individual needs to also think about what are the consequences of my decisions to myself, the personal consequence, as well as the societal consequence. at a certain point, these two different criteria that I described start to merge, right?
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, is there agreement for present me and future me? Is there agreement between the individual me and the society? And I think the more there's an agreement between those parameters, the better decision-making ability there is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one would depend on the context.
Okay.
Because different contexts will call for a change in prioritization of what's important. So I'd say that one is rather more context dependent.
Okay.
But let's assume that you read the context well,
Okay.
and you prioritize well.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're going to succeed. So say something happens, I read my context well, I prioritize well, I can still fail. Things can still go horribly wrong. And then the question that comes to me is, what do you do if you fail, even after checking all the boxes? Resist as much as possible to accept that the frame is death or something I really shouldn't be doing.
Okay.
But let's assume that's the frame that's there.
Okay.
The concept of empiric victory is quite interesting. Say one does everything it takes to survive. But what have you taught yourself and your decision-making matrix? What have you taught your team? What have you taught the people around you? Because you're the leader, right?
Yeah.
It comes back to you.
Yeah.
The company survives. But are you certain that the company that survives is the same company that you had? And are you sure that's the company you want to have?
Wow.
There are certain things that if you introduce into a system, you cannot pull them out. Corruption is one of them. The moment you introduce corruption into a system and toxicity, it's unfortunate.
Wow.
Where whatever the company, so if I take a step back, whenever we talk and I meet a PhD student, the question is, what is the end result of a PhD?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
If I frame it as a binary outcome, it's either it's the PhD thesis itself,
Okay.
or it's the student,
Okay.
right? The doctorate holder at the end of the journey.
Yeah.
I think it's the latter, because the thesis will be put on the shelf,
Yeah.
but it's the individual who developed by working on the thesis that is the end result. So the question comes back, in an entrepreneurial venture, what is the end result? Is it the company? Is it the acquisition funds? Or is it the entrepreneur themselves? Throw it, what is the purpose of life? So I think those questions are not the same, but there's something similar about them.
Yeah.
And I think it also goes to what we're talking about, right? So as an entrepreneur, you and I have certain leanings that we have. Our love affair with Africa.
Yeah.
It means that whatever we do, there's also a component of how does this benefit Africa?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that component is always important to keep in mind, because it gets one to realize that whatever ventures we engage in get the most of us. But we also understand that there's more to it than that. That's a very complicated question, because there are a lot of components. Which Africa are we talking about? Which sector in which Africa we are talking about? But by and large, whenever I think of our continent, I think of progress. I think of resilience. I think of success. So I think in 5 years' time, we're going to be getting into the exciting space where we've been talking about the demographic dividend and how it's going to pay out between 2025 and 2050.
Yeah.
So I think 5 years from now is going to be 2030.
Yeah.
I think we'll start seeing that rise in the demographic dividend, and I think we are in an interesting place because at the time when we were talking about Africa rising and the demographic dividend, the impacts of technologies that are now there, for example, AI, which how can we have a conversation about this, that AI, right, had not been fully brought into that conversation. And so the question then becomes, how does our demographic dividend, the progress, the trajectory we have, the different 2063 targets that we have, how do those and technology come and merge in? I think that there's a lot of exciting work that friends, colleagues are doing.
Right.
Very passionate people, very smart people who are working on having better healthcare. So I think healthcare will get better. Because I've seen the people that are working on it. I also know public sector is also doing a lot of work on it. So I think
so there's hope for confidence.
Oh, definitely, always.
Wow.
There's always hope. The excitement that I have with AI is there's a certain democratization of capabilities as well as solution building for whatever it is that the problem that one has a challenge with, that one wants to work on. And I think that's great because we always talk about the benefits of diversity. And I think technology, not just AI, but this is and this is the thing, right? This is a wave it's not just AI. This is an entire wave that has been going on, right?
Yeah.
And you can see it even in the music industry. Someone can have a Billboard charting song recorded on their phone. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
Of course there's AI in the phone, but this is a wave where we're going around the democratization of it. I wear a watch that tells me how many steps I've taken, how many hours I slept. I want to have control over my life. And they say it's not a coincidence that we're also talking about personalized medicine, right? Where we want to know what's your genetic makeup, what is the best medication for you to have. So this is an entire wave that we are riding, where we are going. I'm not trivializing AI. I think that AI is going to be what electricity is to us today. Where I was talking to my dad, and then he said, when I was talking about that, he said, "Oh, so you mean like a power tool?" Yeah. When my family are mechanics, right? Exactly. Yeah. Instead of me having a screwdriver and trying to drive a screw in for 5 minutes, I just come with my power tool and just, a second. I'm done. I'm there. Yeah. That's what I think AI is as a tool, as an aid to what we want to achieve. Yeah. So I'm quite excited about this democratization of solution provision by the people for the people. So I think that's great. Of course, with anything that is of such significant importance, it's important for us to understand it well and also try to predict
and mitigate the risk, because there are a lot of risk attached.
We didn't do such a good job with social media. It is a tool of significant strength and potential, and as a society, I think we could have done better. Because now we are seeing the benefits of social media are incredible. We can see them, right? There's space there for government, as you've clearly outlined. Yeah. There's also space for entrepreneurs and the inventors of this, because there was a time when it was all about maximizing shareholder value. That time is come and gone. Okay. It's about more than that. Okay. It's about understanding what your triple bottom line looks like. Right. It's about understanding.
And you mentioned those triple bottom lines.
The question is, it's not just about what is the monetary profit we made, what is the social impact that we had, what did we do to the climate, what does our practice, not just our policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion look like? What does it look like when it comes to modern slavery, the partners we work with? So there's a lot that now goes into building.
And yet you have to factor all those ethical issues in the midst of the unimaginable competition.
Exactly, right. And then there's always the argument, which is, are these ethical issues that are just on the side, or are they actually a source of competitive advantage? The research the latest research that I've seen is that if your team is diverse, you reach greater levels of profitability. So that is an important consideration. The question is, where do we place these issues? Are they adjuncts? Are they nice to have? Are they boxes we tick as at the end of of the year when we say, oh, by the way, we did this, or is it woven into our
integral into
right?
operations?
It goes back to the same question which we spoke about, which is, what is my immediate goal? What is the immediate outcome of my actions, and what is the long-term outcome of my actions?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Personal success, or you can look at it as an organizational success versus societal success.
Yeah.
At what is the benefit of building the best company in a decaying society? Even if that company makes you most powerful, most wealthiest people, you are we only have one. For the moment, we only have one Earth, right? And we only have each other. So what's the point? So I think there's also a role for entrepreneurs to be thinking about the things that they're developing and unleashing on society. I think civil society is also important to come in here. And there's no great divide between the people that are inventing and the people that can conceptualize the consequences. It's the same people. And I know the engineers that are creating these fantastic tools think about these things. And I know that there's dialogue that's going on with them to be able to actually get there. And I come from a place of hope, right?
Yeah.
Where I have hope that the people that are steering us in certain directions are thinking about the consequences and actually actively thinking about how we can avoid them. We've got enough precedents. We know what happened with plastics. We know what happened with a lot of the chemicals that were useful, are useful, have devastating effects on the environment. We know what happened with social media. I'd like to believe that some part of us is human learning, human intelligence, right? Where we can truly impact the healthcare systems around the world with the diagnostics that we develop. We have an exciting pipeline. I can't talk about it right now, but we've got an exciting pipeline.
So there's much more.
And I want to see us bring these products into the market. We've had incredible support, you know, from people thinking about what we are doing. And I really want us to be able to take these products and put them in someone's hands and just come here and say, brother, here's the diagnostic we spoke about.
Wow.
And then here's another one, and another one. It is a significant project that we want. At the core of it, we think we can do things better.
Wow.
And we want to do things better.
Brother, it's been nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.